Myself as chair. We also got Vice Chair Lisa Baker.
Here. Hello, I'm sorry to interrupt. I can't hear anything.
I had my microphone.
Me either.
Okay, is that good? Hey, Lori. Good morning.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, before we call for public testimony, just a little disclaimer. This is my first time running, so please bear with me on this. Appreciate everybody's support, those who got to talk to Lori or Vance or Corey before the meeting on any of the items.
I'm sorry to interrupt again. I can't hear anything.
There we go.
It's real choppy for some reason.
How about now? Is that good?
Yeah, now I can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so first up, item 3, the October monthly progress report. Vance, Suda.
Good morning, Vance Suda, Heart Project Director. And starting with the monthly progress report for October. And Ryan, if you can pull that up and go to page 5. And as usual, I'll go through the key issues in the report. I'll give you the up-to-date information and status, and I'll kind of take it out of order. Starting from CCR3 and then moving through to CCGS. So starting with CCR3, the contractor continues to close out punch list items. Expected to have all that completed early next year, January, February timeframe. And at that point, we'll issue substantial completion. So working through some of the punch lists, as I mentioned before, from DTS and HDOT walkthroughs that were identified. CCR4, 4E, so the 46 kV, all that infrastructure and cabling had been installed and cut over, so all the overhead lines have been de-energized and all the underground is all energized. 12 kV infrastructure continues to be completed and turned over to HECO. So there are some punch list items, as infrastructure is completed, inspections are done with HECO and punch list items are identified, and the contractor goes back and completes those before the infrastructure will be accepted and cables can be pulled through. So continue to work through punch list items here and there to get that infrastructure accepted. Moving on to 138 kV, I think the last time we reported the issues with the conduits and the sweeps, and at that point in time we were doing some surveys, so we exposed some of those sweeps, took some survey shots, and went back, reviewed the data. Unfortunately, those sweeps didn't meet the design requirements, so they do have to be replaced. Since then, we've had multiple discussions with the 4 and 4E contractor as well as HECO and internal meetings to determine how these sweeps will be replaced. So we have to put together work plans, as we excavate next to these foundations to remove the sweeps. Some of these foundations, most of them have poles installed on them, and if there's shoring or bracing that's needed, we have to show that and how that's going to be done. So those work plans were put together. I think 3 out of the 6, so there's 6 poles that have foundations that have poles on them that have the sweeps that need to be replaced. 3 of the work plans have been reviewed by HECO. There's some minor comments that we're addressing. The other 3 are being finalized by the end of this week with our structural engineer, and then it will go to HECO for review. We're expected to start exposing some of those conduits on those work plans that were approved hopefully this weekend, and then start the process for replacing. And the replacement portion of that, we have a plan as well. Basically, the conduits are going to be bent on the ground, on surface, using a jig, verified before they're installed. Everybody approves, and then it's going to be installed, and then we'll go through and pull, the HECO mandrel to get HECO's acceptance of the entire run again. So that's kind of high level in terms of the next steps to get that completed. We are also looking at and making a determination on how much cable needs to be ordered. There were some cable, as I mentioned previously, that were pulled that exceeded the tension, so those cables won't be able to be warranted. So cables need to be replaced. So we're determining that currently with the contractor. We don't have a schedule yet that will determine the overall shift or delay. We do know there's going to be a delay in that. 138 was the second or third critical path within our schedule. So we're still evaluating. We're also looking at mitigations, how we can potentially pull these cables in certain ways to mitigate any delays. And again, 138 kV is the driver for access to Dillingham for the CCGS contractor. So we're doing these exercises, looking at mitigations and making that determination. And once we have that, we can present that in terms of impacts to the schedule. The 4 contractor continues with flat work, so sidewalk, curb, and gutter along Dillingham in select areas, and they're not moving in one linear fashion. They're hop, skip, jumping to where they have access and areas that they can do that work, and then they're going to start to do the intersection work, so all the traffic lights and sidewalks and transitions for the intersections. Excuse me. Moving on to CCGS, so we continue with design activities. Last week, Thursday, we had our first of the second round of neighborhood design workshops for the stations. So just a reminder, every station has to go through a design workshop. We have 2 workshops per station. We completed all of the first round workshops. Chinatown Station, last week, Thursday, we had our first of the second design workshops, and we had a pretty decent turnout. Not as many people from the community as the first workshop, but basically just to give you a high-level overview of what we did, we presented the mitigations to the community and public. So we from that first workshop, we took in all the comments, kind of went through them, see what we can apply, and we came out with 5 mitigations. I'm not going to go through what they are exactly, but we presented them, and then the public got a chance to vote on which one they like best. Fortunately, due to budget and cost, we can't incorporate all 5 mitigation measures. We have to select 1 or 2. But it gave the community the opportunity to kind of give their voice as to what they want to see, and we did get a good turnout for the voting. We'll continue on with these design workshops for the other stations starting early next year. And if you don't, for the public, if you don't subscribe to our website so that you can get the notifications once it's scheduled. Moving on to shaft construction. So shaft construction continues. We've got 8 shafts completed, and they're completing CSL testing, or cross-hole sonic logging testing. That's just to verify that the concrete is sound. These shafts are anywhere from 50 feet to 200 feet deep. So they're testing it to make sure all the concrete's sound before column construction. They're expected to pour the 9th shaft today, depending on the weather. It's kind of rainy out there, so hoping that they can get that done. That will be the last shaft for the year, and then they'll pick up again early next year. And then, depending on if all goes well with the CSL testing, they're expected to begin column construction sometime early next year, between the first and second quarter timeframe. The trestle that was being installed at the Alva Triangle, if you're going Nimitz, on Nimitz, westbound, before you hit Evelay Road on the left-hand side, that big structure there, that's to support the column shaft drilling. So that trestle is just wrapping up. They should be done by tomorrow. And then they'll start staging equipment and other material there. And that's all to support, as I mentioned, shaft drilling. Station construction, Chinatown Station, they began site prep work. Unfortunately, I mentioned last time they ran into an underground storage tank. So they got all the approvals to remove the storage tank. Now it's just a matter of coordination and scheduling that work. So once that's out of the way, they will continue with site prep work and then foundations. So that'll most likely be next year timeframe, early next year timeframe. And that's all I have. Open to questions.
Appreciate it, Vince. Thanks for the updates. It's like, known right now is the 138 kV.
That's correct.
Board members, any questions for Vince? Anybody?
Chair. Vance, so on the sweeps, this may be, and you may have said it, maybe I just missed it, but is there a way of pulling the mandrel prior to installing the sweeps?
Yeah, so what we're planning to do, and we got agreement with contractors and the cable manufacturer, so those sweeps will be heat bent on the ground using a jig so that we can for sure meet the requirements of the design of the 8-foot diameter sweep. And then we'll pull the mandrel through just to make sure everybody agrees, signs off on it, and then it'll be installed. And then obviously, once that's installed, we'll use the HECO mandrel to verify that there's no debris or any damage from that time when we put the conduit back.
Okay. And the delays, the potential, I guess, delays that were, are there, is it likely that hopefully Hart may not be responsible for whatever delays result, or is that still being discussed?
That's still being discussed. The CCR4 contractor has not dispute the conduits. We expose the sweeps and they agree that it does need to be replaced, doesn't meet the requirements. In terms of overall delay impacts, we haven't had that discussion with any of the contractors, but internally we are.
And just more of a comment, that I've been getting feedback from, so my office is like right in front of the work that's being done on Nimitz right now, and I mean, kind of night and day, Nimitz and Dillingham. I kind of explained Dillingham is a whole different animal. You're dealing with different issues and whatnot, so it might not be apples to apples, but what they're doing on Nimitz is pretty, I didn't even know they're there most times unless I see the huge cranes outside.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And yeah, kudos to Tudor. We did a site walk yesterday just to see some of the CSL testing, and with all that heavy rain that we recently had, you look over to the travel lanes, there isn't any major spillage of, dirt or any material onto those travel lanes. They did a really good job containing that all in that work area.
The amount of space they have to work with and the work that they're doing, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Anyway, just thought I'd.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Any other board members' comments?
Yeah, just to kind of tack on to what Kika said, I actually drove by that area at night, and it wasn't bad either. And it was kind of surprising, although, to be fair, I got to watch the guideway go up right by the airport, and that didn't seem to affect traffic at all either. I think, like you were saying, sometimes it's the different animals. Dillingham's just a nightmare, and Nimitz and the other areas haven't been as bad. But yeah, kudos to Tudor, because that's definitely a pain point for us.
Appreciate it. And as board chair mentioned, it's not apples to apples. Unfortunately, you know, Non has to move over, do work here, do work there. So, you know, it's a little challenging for them, but, you know, we do inspections and walkthroughs to make sure they keep in line as much as possible.
Anybody else here? Natalie or Anthony, any questions? Anthony, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just one quick. There was a suggestion at one point that it wouldn't just be the sweeps, but the entire duct that wouldn't meet the mandrel test, and I wonder what the latest is on that.
Yeah, so the position that we're taking, and we had recent discussions with HECO, you know, the areas outside of the sweeps, you know, our horizontals, they don't have any major sweeps in them, so it wouldn't require a check with the mandrel. We verify with, you know, our field inspection reports, designs, you know, take a look at what was put in the ground, and we don't foresee any areas that have violations of that sweep requirement.
Vince, this is kind of a minor one, but you know when you referenced the public meetings and you said people can go to the website to find out more information, is it possible for us to create like a QR code so that we can have it on the screen as our meetings are broadcast live? So in case anybody wanted to, they could just scan it and then get the information right there. It's a little daunting to say, go to the website and then, you know, you have to find the website and then you have to navigate to where the meetings are. So if we provided that QR code that provides immediate access, I think that'd be helpful.
Yeah, maybe in next month's meeting in the PLC agenda, we can put a link since that gets distributed. And once we have it scheduled,
Yep.
If we don't have it scheduled, we won't.
Or
won't
even
put
if
that
it's
link.
a link to just generally public meetings, you know, like a calendar or something so people can see. I think that'd just make it a little more accessible to people. Thank you.
And then just to tack on to that, we checked because attendance has gone down a little bit. You know, from the first one, we've seen a decline in attendance. We have our email blast that goes out and notify, you know, especially in the areas of the stations that we're presenting. We've got, I would say, you know, 1,000 emails going out before the meeting just to let everyone know. So it is being broadcast as well via email blast.
Anybody else?
In regards to Anthony's question about mandrel pulling on the horizontals, did you say that there is no requirement to pull on the horizontals?
So we're pulling the HECO mandrel. The requirements require, and you know, with agreements with HECO has a spec mandrel size that they require, and requirements for, you know, when it comes out the other end and inspecting the mandrel. We're following those requirements as per HECO specs. So we'll pull the HECO mandrel through all the runs.
Including horizontal?
Yes.
Okay.
So end to end, basically.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, because usually the mandrel test also checks the joints.
Yeah.
Right.
So damage, joints, things like that,
Okay.
it'll verify.
And blunt end or tapered?
Tapered.
Tapered, okay. Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you for the questions. Good discussion. If not, we can move on to the next item 4, the October PMOC report.
Yep.
Nancy, you gonna do it? Or?
Yep. So as usual, go through the major issues and our concerns in the PMOC report. We can go to page 5. So starting with the first item, project cost risk, and this references the Hitachi claim. And we have in the full board an update for the board in terms of where we are with the claim. So I won't go into too much detail there. Moving on to the next item, the city center utility relocation contracts and status. I kind of talked through majority of this. The only difference here, the PMOC highlights the AIS work or Archaeological Inventory Survey for CCR3. I think we mentioned a couple meetings back that all that physical work, so all the investigative work has been completed. The report is being finalized. We are looking at having that completed in mid-January timeframe and then turned over to SHPD for their review. Everything else I kind of talked through in terms of the progress and where we are status-wise. And then the last item, I believe, is the CCGS and just tracking that progress in terms of the design, schedule, and overall contract monitoring.
Yes. If there's any questions on the PMLC report?
Chris, I have one.
Go ahead. Ned. Yep. Go ahead, Ned.
Thank you. Thank you, Vance. So on page 5 of the report regarding the Hitachi claim, the PMOC recommends that there's a thorough review of the Hart financial plan. And I'm assuming, I'm pretty sure, but I just want to confirm, this is prior to the counterclaim filed by Hart, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then at the next PMOC meeting, I'm assuming that whole issue will be discussed, correct?
Yes, and we did discuss, we keep PMOC and FTA up to date in terms of where we are with the claim. And somewhat related, we did do a risk refresh with the PMOC earlier this month to kind of address some of their concerns related to that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Vance. Thank you, Chair.
Natalie, just to clarify, on page 5, this was when we were still in negotiations. This was before the lawsuit, and then the board subsequently declined the settlement number. So that's what the concern was. The settlement number was much higher. So,
Yeah, that's what I thought, because there's always that lag in between the time that the
Yes.
meeting and the report comes out,
Yeah,
and then that we have a discussion about
yes,
it.
yes, this is old data. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's September information in the October report.
Chair?
Go ahead, Anthony.
There's, I guess, one risk that doesn't appear as an official risk, but that we've all been aware of since we awarded the CCGS contract, which is the cost of the stations. We all know that Tutor Perini wanted more money for the stations. We said no. And I know you guys are watching this like a hawk. I'm just wondering if you've had any early indications of where there may be pressure on that the cost of the stations, may be having some sort of an impact.
Yeah, so we've gotten, and just to remind everyone, as the question in terms of Anthony, the process that we have in place for the stations, we have $300 million set forth in the contract for all 6 stations, and we have this iterative process with the contractor where we're heavily involved with getting subcontractor costs, and we review those proposals as a team together with Tutor and Hart. We make the determination on which subcontractor to move forward with, and the idea there is that Tutor was having difficulty getting pricing from subcontractors when they put their bid together, and we feel we have fairly good relationships with local contractors here and other contractors doing work on the island, that we could reach out to them and encourage them to put forth a bid or package. We've gotten a couple of packages so far for station foundations that we're reviewing. The pricing seems fairly reasonable in terms of what we've estimated, give or take an increase or decrease here and there, but we're going through that process now. Nothing so far with the 2 packages we received indicates any risk or concerns, but it's very early on. It's only the station foundations and steel, which is kind of the big portion of the station, but we still have to go through that process.
Thanks.
Any other questions? PMLC. Hearing none. Thank you, Vance. Appreciate it. Move to item 5, eminent domain. We believe we have 3 items that we have to act on, so we'll go one at a time. Call up Krista. That's her. We'll start with A, Resolution 2025-28, which requires eminent domain property in simple interest. This is regarding the Pacific Guardian.
So I do have one presentation that covers all three matters. Would it be okay if I gave the full presentation first? And then we can talk about each one individually? Is that okay? Okay. This is request for approval to acquire property interests by eminent domain for 3 properties. They are referred to as Pacific Guardian Center, Design Partners, and the Marioka Trust. Next page, please. The Pacific Guardian Center, this is a map of the property. The orientation is kind of skewed. They're not the same. If you look at the map on the right, you can see the Hart acquisition area in yellow. That is for station purposes. Blue is a temporary area around that we need just during the period of time for construction. And then the small area on the very right corner of that is shown blown up there on the very, very right of the map in kind of a buff color and green, where the sidewalk and traffic stop or traffic control box are in the that orangish color, and then the temporary area is green for construction purposes only. So for the most part, that acquisition is 3,734 square feet needed for construction of the station, and then an additional 2,863 for temporary purposes. The permanent easement for the sidewalk and the traffic stop switch box is 37 square feet. Moving on to the next property, Design Partners. This property is along Halakawila, and there is going to be a straddle bent column primarily in the right-of-way. However, the maintenance area around it and a portion of the column are on their property, so it's just the yellow portion there. It is 148 square feet. And then moving on to the Marioka Trust. That is for an electrical easement. It is underground conduit and access. So it's long and narrow because of the, if HECO needed to service the equipment, they would need to get across the property to do so. As you can see on the left, that's a parking lot structure, and the equipment is actually on the building. So HECO needs access to get back to its equipment. Next page, please. So all of these property interests are necessary for the Honolulu Rail Transit Project. Just compensation has been determined in accordance to the Uniform Act, and written offers were provided to the owners. City Council has already been notified of our intent to utilize eminent domain to obtain these property rights. The council had 45 days to approve or object to Hart's use of condemnation by adoption of a resolution in response to the notification. The council took no action in any of the 3 matters. Efforts will continue throughout the condemnation process to negotiate a reasonable and amicable settlement. And it's necessary to move forward with condemnation in order to adhere to our project schedule needs. Thank you. And so now, if there's questions, we may need to go into executive session depending on what the questions are, because these are ongoing negotiations. Most of the conversation should be in executive session. So let's start with Pacific Guardian Center. Was there questions?
Any questions up front here?
Chair,
Yes.
if I may. Thank you, Krista. So I find it interesting that the council didn't take any action. It has, and if maybe you can't answer this, but has there been like any pushback on this, or I find it very curious that they took no action on that. So has there been no public input on that, or do you know?
The council has not taken action on any of our condemnation matters for as long as I've been presenting them to the board here. So since 2021, the council hasn't. It's my understanding that maybe previous to that, they did have different times where they asked for hearings, but that has not happened at all while I've been presenting or requesting approval for condemnation.
Okay, interesting. I thought there had been. Another, just a question, and I'm not sure you're the right person to answer this, but the resolutions refer to the revised ordinances of Honolulu as 1973. And as I recall, back in 2020 or 2021, the city council had a whole discussion about how they refer to how they provide the citation for the ordinances. And city council actually uses revised ordinances of Honolulu 2021. So that may be a question for Dan, but I found it curious that we're using 1973 when the city council in their bills, they use 2021. Do you know about that?
I do have some core counsel here today.
Good morning, Brad Saito. Oh, sorry. Good morning, Brad Saito, Corporation Counsel. I think we might be mixing the revised charter of Honolulu with the revised ordinances of Honolulu. So for the revised ordinances of Honolulu, it will be 2021 as amended, and the 1973 date would be for the charter.
Thank you for that clarification. I missed that really important word. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Brad.
I'd like to request that we go into executive session to, I've got a bunch of questions that I don't think can be asked in.
Can I ask a question before we go into exec session, and we can decide whether or not to answer it in exec? So for the Muraoka property, can you describe again, Krista, what the purpose of the easement is for?
It's part of the utility relocation work. And so there's facilities underground to service that building that you can see there on the left. And in order for HECO to, first of all, that conduit goes pretty far into the property, so they couldn't service it from Kamehameha Highway. They would actually need to be on the property. So it's a lot of reason for the easement is access to get to the facilities to service the building that's in the back part of that property. So it's underground. They can continue to drive over it. They can use the property as they are currently, but it would allow HECO the ability to get in the property to get to their equipment that's on the building.
The map on the right side of this figure where it kind of turns, does a 90, what is that?
That's where it's actually placed, so it's, from what I...
Is that underground as
It is
well?
underground, it's conduit.
There's a structure though. At that location, no?
It goes up to the building, it doesn't go under the building, is my understanding.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question before we move into executive session? Hearing none, I think we need a vote to go into executive session. So Lisa, would you like to motion? Do I need a second? Second to go into executive session. Chris, thank you. Anybody opposed? If not, it is 8:34. We'll move into executive session this time.
Chris, if I may make my comment, please.
Natalie, just to clarify, Kalana's the chair. He's running the
Oh,
meeting.
sorry. Oh my God. So sorry.
It's okay. It's like Chris isn't answering you.
Yeah, okay, Kalana.
So noted. Thanks, Natalie.
It's okay. All right, so there is no formal written document that prohibits me from attending the executive session. I am bound by confidentiality as the AG has notified me. However, I understand that Corporation Counsel has stated that since I have not signed the confidentiality agreement, I will not be allowed into the executive session today. Thank you, Kalana.
Thanks, Natalie. Appreciate that. Okay, we are back in session for the PLC meeting. We just got out of executive session. Just to summarize, there was a discussion on each of the 3 eminent domain parcels. updating us on what the current status is and how the negotiations are proceeding, which seems to be moving along well. For the record, there was no action taken on any of the three. So that being said, we will now move to get back on the agenda, and we are on the first eminent domain for the Pacific Guardian Center. We need a motion for on this item to move forward. So, would anybody like to make a motion? Motion for approval by Lisa, second by Chris. Any discussion? Anybody in opposition or would like to abstain? Hearing none, motion is passed. Move to the item B, the design partners parcel. Need a motion. Motion to pass for approval, second by Chris. Any discussion? Anybody in opposition or would like to abstain? Hearing none, motion is passed, and we'll move to C, which is the Morioka Trust property. Motion to approve by Lisa, second by Chris. Any discussion? Anybody that would like to abstain or oppose? Hearing none, motion is passed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Krista.
Chair. Just for clarification, so these three items are going to be moved to the
Yes,
full
sorry.
board for further action?
Yes, these three items will be moved to the board for action.
Thank you.
But summary. Okay, and then now we'll go to item 6, Carolyn, for the summary of the board member requests.
Thank you, Chair. We had one request during the POC from board member Katahira, who requested that a QR code that provides access to HART's calendar of events be included in the monthly progress report moving forward. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Anything else by committee members or board members? If none, meeting is adjourned at 8:59. Thank you, everybody.
Natalie Iwasa, Kika Bukowski, and Nelson Lee. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Okay, so let's move on to agenda item number 2, which is public testimony. Are there any members of the public in the audience or online who would like to provide testimony on any of the items listed in the Finance Committee agenda? Hearing none, seeing none, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is number 3, FY27 capital and operating budgets. I just wanted to provide committee an update, a status update. So happy to announce that last month in November, this committee had approved and recommended the FY27 budget. That budget has since been delivered to City Council via the Mayor's office. Our deadline to do so was December 1st, and we met that deadline. So thank you to our committee members and to management for making that happen. My understanding is the budget is now in the hands of City Council, and we had to do some reformatting of the budget to follow the City Council's format. Numbers have not changed, but there's expected to be perhaps some iterations moving forward before we receive the budget back from City Council. We're expecting it back in no later than June 26, 2026. So between now and then, we're just going to be waiting to see if there's any changes, proposed changes to the budget. And once we receive it back from City Council, we'll turn around as a committee and as a board. We'll look at any proposed changes, if any, and then hopefully move forward with the final budget by the end of June 2026. So happy to announce we're on track for that. Any questions before I move on? Okay, let's move on to agenda item number 4, which is the November 2025 cash flow report. I think Corey.
Hey, good morning. I thought it was on, sorry. I'll be covering the cash flow report summary for the month of November. Starting at the top, you can see actual funding exceeded our projections by about $5.2 million. GET coming in, making the majority of that, coming in higher, about $5.7 million. Slightly under on TAT, about $1.3 million. And then investment income was over by about $766,000. Next, uses. So capital expenditures and operating expenditures for the month was about $41.3 million, which is a pretty good month. Snapshot of some of those higher expenses going to be our City Center Guideway and Stations contract at $16.6 million. Core Systems paid 4.3 or 4.4 nearly. CCR3 and CCR4 respectively, $6 million and $11 million for the month. Financing activities stayed pretty consistent at $14.1 million, paying back our GOB principal and interest. Section 4 just kind of recaps what we talked about in 1. There was a surplus of $5.2 million. And then 5 is capturing what was our variances from month versus what do we project versus actuals. And these contracts here, or 2 of them are contracts, 2 buckets are actually related to contingency. So CNI services and our HART 201, HART operational expenses came in under our projection of about 1.5 and 1.6 million respectively. With that, I will pause there if there's any questions.
Thank you, Corey. Lisa.
Yeah, I've got on the HART operational expenses, is there a reason, or do we have an understanding as to why that was so much lower than it projected?
I do not. I don't know, Mike, do you have any? I'd have to look at it and see what kind of happened that month. It was probably just a delay timing in some of the bills that got paid, but.
Okay, would you mind just following up on that?
I'll
Thanks.
follow up with it.
Is that number 5?
Yes.
Yes.
HRT 201.
Yes, Roger.
Martin,
Roger, your microphone, please.
I'm happy to see the GET has exceeded our projections. It's been kind of lagging in the past.
Yeah.
I'm pleased to see the GET is exceeding our projection for this last month. Any idea of because I know it's been a kind of it's been tough, but are we catching up with payments from the state, or what would you attribute the favorable projection for this last month?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, Roger. It's a good one. GET, despite some softness in the revenue receipts, GET has kind of been a bright spot. In fact, we just got some information from the State Department of Taxation a few days ago about how, despite again, some softness in the economy and some reduced overall revenues at the state level and the state general fund to which GET contributes. The first 4 months of fiscal year 26 have GET's actually outperformed expectations, and it's specifically for the first 4 months of 26. There's been a 5.8% increase over the same period for the previous years. That's really good for us. In the financial plan, our year-over-year projection for GET specific revenue growth is 4.8%. So the current trend is above the projection that we have in the financial plan. So good news. I think I mentioned a couple of meetings ago that 3 of the last 4 fiscal quarters, overall revenue projections, collections rather, GET, TAT, OTAT, everything, we've been below the recovery target in the financial plan, and so we're still keeping an eye on that. But recent information is I don't want to be too optimistic about this, but recent information is that things might not be quite as bad or quite as dire as originally forecasted. There's news now that inflation is not quite as bad as was anticipated, to be taken with a grain of salt. But yeah, we're keeping a close eye on it. But yeah, GET has been a strong performer for us, and even through the first 4 months of this year, continues to keep that reputation.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Roger. Any other questions?
I have another one.
Yes, Lisa.
So on that same thing, have you gotten any ideas or feel for TAT? Because that's significant in November.
TAT, not the same story. The TAT is up year over year collections at the state, but not at the level that we have projected in the financial plan. Fortunately, GET, as everyone knows, is a much larger portion of the revenue that we get from the state. I think, don't quote me on this, but I think the number for the first 4 months of 26 compared to the first 4 months of 25, I think it was like a 1.6% increase. So it's up, but not where we need it to be according to what we have in the financial plan.
And what did we have in the financial plan?
8.1% year over year.
8.1.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Again, it's and I'm happy to present more information on this at the next board meeting. But again, TAT is a much smaller component of the overall revenues, and the numbers are still bearing out, but that increase that we have on GET might come close to bridging some of that gap that's being left by the lowered TAT numbers.
Okay.
Yeah. But I can do a fuller.
This is sufficient. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Any other questions?
Yes, I have a couple.
Please, Natalie.
Thank you. So yeah, thank you, Mike. yeah, the GET, I mean, you know, if we have inflation, we're going to have higher GET revenues. It just goes hand in hand. But I'm sure you're all aware that Maui now is really looking at restricting their short-term rentals. And then on Oahu, too, we have that relatively new law that went into place. It's just, you know, Hawaii as a whole is tending toward having less short-term rentals and focusing more on the hotels, which are fixed. You know, our short-term rentals seems to be bringing in a lot of money, or was. So just a comment that as you go forward and you're looking at the financial plan, be really critical of that component of it. I think that, you know, we're going to see some decreased revenues continuing in that area. And then I do have a question on the release of the debt reserve, the 4.3 million. I think that's the first time that that has happened. And I was just wondering, can we expect this to continue as the debt is paid down? Because I always thought that it was just going to be held on to by the city until the very end, until 2030, and then it would be released. Can you clarify that for me, please?
Again, something I'll probably have to get. Good question, Natalie. But again, something I'll probably have to get more information on for next meeting. But generally speaking, the reserve that we're required to have in reserve, the amount of money that we're required to have in reserve is based on the outstanding debt service. So naturally, when we pay that down between now and 2030, the amount of the reserve is going to decrease and be released back to HART. So we can expect continuing releases, but again, I can provide more specifics on what the projections for those releases are at the next board meeting.
Okay, thank you. I think if that's going to continue, then it may impact the principal payment. I'm not sure exactly the mechanism or how that works, whether they allow the reserve to be part of the principal payment, or if it just goes back into the fund and then we pay the full debt service. But I just ask that you take a look at that. And
Natalie, sorry for interrupting, but is Mike's response adequate, or would you like more follow-up in a future meeting?
well, I think if it's going to be regular reserve reductions, that would be good for us to know. And perhaps on the, I guess in the cash flow statement, we'll see that impact there. If there's more information, then it'd be nice to have it. But I understand what he's saying. I think I get what's happening here.
Okay, so just for, I guess for Carolyn and our follow-up sake, then it sounds like we're okay with the response and that there's no additional information needed from Mike specifically to your question.
Well, if he finds out any additional information, then it would be good for him to update us.
Okay.
I do have a follow-up question on it, though. So just for clarification again, that debt reserve only applies to the GO bonds, correct? It doesn't apply to the TCEP, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Natalie. Any other questions? All right, if not, let's move on to agenda item number 6, which is summary of board member requests. Carolyn.
Thank you, Chair. I believe there is just one specific request from Board Member Baker, who requested clarification on why actual cash flow was lower than projected for HRT 201. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Is there any other business to discuss here at the Finance Committee meeting? Hearing none, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned at 9:16. Thank you, everyone.
All right. This is the Human Resources Committee meeting being called to order at 9:17. And I am Lisa Baker, the chair. Anthony Alto.
Sorry, I was muted. Present.
All right, thanks, Anthony. John Katahira.
Here.
Nelson Lee.
Here.
Roger Morton.
Here.
All right, we have other board members present also. Is there anyone here to provide public testimony for the HR committee agenda? Hearing none, seeing none. Agenda item number 3 is consider the approval of a salary adjustment for the HART CEO and the HART Board Executive Officer. This is the 2 positions that are accountable to the board. And it became known to me that there was a 2025 salary commission that recommended a 4% increase for cost of living to the general city-wide positions. So the question is for us, do we wish to consider that for both the HART CEO and for the HART Executive Officer? And so if we do want to consider it and there needs to be discussion, we need to go into executive session for the executive officer specifically. If there's concerns about this or anyone has objection, this is the time to bring it up. So I'm looking at the committee members for, do you wish to go into executive session or?
I think we can cover it here,
Okay.
unless there's, may I? I think the increase for...
Your mic.
I thought I had it on. I thought the increase for the executive director was covered in her executive contract. And I don't see any reason why we would deviate from that at this point. I think she's done a great job and would speak in favor of the 4%, which is a reasonable amount, and it's what other public sector employees have been getting around the state. So myself, I'm very comfortable with simply passing it. But unless there are issues that need to be discussed further, but.
No, just for clarification, in the contract under 4B, we do need to approve the change, but it is an annual compensation consideration for each year. Any other conversation? John?
I feel really bad asking this question because of my involvement with Finance Committee, but are these proposed increases budgeted for 26?
Yes.
Yes.
We have ample
Okay.
funds in the salary
Perfect.
line item, yes.
Thank you.
All right. So if there's no further discussion and we're okay in proceeding in this direction, then I need a proposal or what do you call it? Motion to approve a 4% increase for both the HART CEO and the HART Executive Officer.
Chair, we're separate. The executive officer is dictated by a different memo from the mayor. It's a
Okay,
different
our
percentage.
approval couldn't, oh, it is?
It's not, it's 1.75.
Okay.
Yeah,
Excuse
sorry,
me. So,
sorry.
I'm not aware of
That,
this.
that can be done in exec session. Mine cannot, but exec officer can be done in
Okay,
exec session.
so for the HART CEO, a motion for the HART CEO to receive the 4% increase for this. Second? Okay. That's been moved and seconded. Is there anyone, any more discussion? And I don't know how you do this right, but if there's no opposition, then we'll move forward to recommend that to the full board. This does require a full board approval. All right. Okay, so I am not aware of the other percentage for the executive officer. Can you, can that be publicly spoken about?
Dan, the percentage can be publicly discussed? It was,
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's a citywide thing.
It
it's
is.
fine to discuss.
Okay.
it is, so there was a memo, I should have my HR people here. Can you call Sandy down, please?
I only have the memos that you sent me, but I don't think
Okay.
that was in it.
It had nothing to do with the executive
Yeah, okay,
officer.
got
it. So.
Sorry.
There's a memo coming out from, on the city side that excluded managers. If they're an employee as of June 30th, they get, I think, a 2% raise. As of July 1st, then they would get a 1.75% raise. So it's dictated by the city side.
And this memo has not come out yet?
It has.
Oh, it has, okay.
Yes, it's whether the board needs to approve to adopt that.
Okay.
Are you conceding that that memo applies to your hard-appointed officials?
Not appointees, no. These are for the different, so I have 3 appointees, and then the next level down are the
PSCs.
Yes,
But
the
for
EMPSCs.
Yes, but for the appointed officials, does the city control those levels?
For my appointees?
Yeah.
We need finalization from Corporation Council on that, whether the board, the CEO, or administration has that authority for the 3 appointees.
Okay, so.
Oh, wait, he's getting his mic.
I was gonna say, for the board, the only salaries that the board would approve directly would be for the CEO and the board executive officer. So the other ones are not within the board's purview. There are some other DHR and citywide policies that would apply to other employees. I'm not familiar with those. I know Lori's been speaking with one of the other attorneys from Corp Counsel.
And if I could just clarify, that's according to current board rules, that the board would only have the purview of the executive officer and the CEO. That's according to current board rules.
I appreciate that and I understand that, but the other issue is whether those salaries would be under the executive director's purview.
It is. Not everyone at Hart staff except for the executive officer.
But you're defaulting to a citywide directive? Or you just don't want it, you don't need the authority of the board, is that the issue?
Yes,
Yeah,
I'm
okay,
sorry, I
understand.
misunderstood your question, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Does that satisfy you, Roger? Okay.
Is Sandy coming? Oh, how'd you get here first?
So should
Oh, you
we,
call.
to discuss this next with the memo that we haven't seen, should we go into executive session? Or, I don't know the best way to handle this, Dan.
I would maybe just wait for Sandy to come on down and just talk about what the city's general policies are.
Okay.
Yeah, 'cause
And
the
again,
memo is
it's,
public.
I have not looked into specifically whether, sort of how that would apply to Carolyn's position expressly, but I know when we got the salary, when we were going through the hiring in the first place, we did have to go through DHR and did have to follow the salary schedules and whatnot. So I would rely on Sandy for her explanation for that. But I think we can do that we should be able to do that in open session because she's just talking about general citywide policies.
Okay.
Chair. Go ahead.
I just wanted to make a small suggestion, I guess, because we're in open session and because we are discussing potentially sensitive information, if we could refer to the position as the position versus utilizing personal names and whatnot.
Right.
Just so that we, keep as, we stay as sensitive to individuals as possible. Thanks.
Thank you.
So this is kind of a newbie question, me being a relatively new board member. So the executive officer position, I understand, is fairly new. So, I mean, this person
Yes.
that we're talking about is fairly new. So where in the cycle of the contract are we? And the timing, my question is more about the timing.
So the executive officer is under a PSC arrangement. So no separate contract. And the start date was July 1st, I believe, of 2025.
Okay. So the compensation increase would be in effect when?
July 1st.
July. Okay, so that would be like 1 year into the position.
July 1st of 2026.
Okay.
No,
Yeah,
no.
And
That,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead. No, go
Lori,
ahead, Dan, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's no requirement that you take up the executive officer salary increase today. Under the CEO's contract, there was a provision to do it annually, and so that's why the committee was doing it today. But because we're looking at a July 1 start date, the committee could also do this another time if that would be more
Yeah,
convenient.
no, me personally, I'm not asking these questions because I'm against the increase.
Right.
I'm just trying to understand the timing of it.
And when you said
Let me-
July, which July?
Let me try
25 or
explain
26?
how the mayor's memo that came out. So this is for all of Hart's citywide personal service contracts at the EM level. It requires a mayor's memo. That memo came out recently, but it's retro for all the other EMs across the city. So, I mean, I really didn't even have a say in it. The mayor put out a memo, and all of my EMs, PSCs are getting, I think it's 2% raise if they're employees as of June 30th, and they're getting retro from July 1st. The question that's posed in front of you folks today is the executive officer also eligible for that? You're going to approve that, the retro to July 1st, or are you going to, so right now it's 1.75% because the employee was as of July 1st. So it's 1.75 versus 2%. And are you going to approve the retro to July 1st, or are you going to make it effective July 1st of 26?
Oh, thanks, Laura. I misunderstood the retro.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, and I think the issue does not need to be resolved today, if I understand. So
That is correct.
In favor of time, I think we just go forward with the approval, which we already have, of suggesting that for the CEO, who is a contractual issue and it is annual, and it's time at this point to review that we proceed with that and recommend to the full board that be approved.
Yeah, and the committee can next month take up both retroactive and future for the executive officer if it wants to. Yeah.
Is that sufficient with everyone on the committee? Okay. Yes.
If I may, just a comment with respect to the executive session. So my understanding is that the executive officer is similar in privacy matters to the ED CEO, and I'm not so sure that you would be able to go into executive session to discuss this. So I just ask that since you're going to be putting it on the agenda for next month, that you take a look at that closely as far as what the requirements are for the executive session. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. I did check with Dan and got a reading from not only core system or core council, but also you went to somebody else.
The Office of Information Practices.
Yeah, so we do have that advice to go on. Thank you.
Good to know. Thank you.
So just another reminder to all of us, we're going to be starting the evaluation for the CEO, and that will kick off in the beginning of January. Also, just a real quick update, Lori has, or the CEO, excuse me, has registered for the, what do you call it?
UC Berkeley CEO Professional Development.
UC Berkeley Professional Development, and so that was one of the stipulations in the contract, and that was met before the end of the year. So, summary of board member request, or was there any more discussion about item number 3?
Chair, so based on just what you said about doing an evaluation, maybe suggestion for next time is to do the evaluation before the salary increase discussion, so that we have something to compare.
She did bring that up, but contractually, it's annually also, so it's not till January.
Okay.
Yeah, so point of order here, I have considered that and was advised that there isn't a correlation at this particular time with this particular contract.
Okay.
So we do have the opportunity during the evaluation to make considerations, but this is for what we need to do right now for the contract.
Okay.
And just to make sure everybody has the contract, if you don't, please ask Carolyn for a copy of it so that you can go through it. It was very specific and very vetted out in 2024 when it was put together. So,
Okay,
Right.
so this is a one-time thing, but in future, it should be in better
it's
sync
every
You need to read
year,
my contract.
annually,
every year. Okay.
as per the contract.
Okay, so and maybe I'm not understanding the timing thing, but to me, it makes most sense to have an evaluation done of performance and then have a discussion on compensation, or at least at the same time, rather than to approve compensation and then do the evaluation. To me, it doesn't make sense.
Right,
Yeah.
and granted, though you need to look at
Okay.
the wording of 4B to
Okay.
understand why we're doing it this way.
Okay.
I think that will help.
Yeah, I think the philosophy when this was done, there was a lot of drama historically over this. And so the philosophy was that Lori would be treated the same as other city workers. Whether that's right or wrong, it is what it is. But that was the basis for the way it is structured. I evaluate my employees annually, but it's not correlated at all to anything that they get. They simply get whatever the salary commission, at least for my senior employees, they get what the salary commission says.
Yeah, and historically, John, there was bonuses built into my contract, and that is what the annual evaluation, it was to see if the criteria was met, and then it was at the decision of the board whether to grant me a bonus or not. It was to Roger's point, it caused a lot of angst on both sides, my side and the board side, because even if the board approved a bonus, I wouldn't accept it. And so it just caused, so we intentionally, when we were negotiating my contract, intentionally we eliminated the bonuses, but the bonus was what was tied to the performance evaluation, yeah.
So,
Kika?
sorry, Chair, thanks. Just for my clarification, so is the amount of the cost of living increase a fixed amount or is it up to?
In my contract language says up to whatever the DTS director was granted from the salary commission.
Okay,
So
it's
it's
not
the
a
board,
static-
it's the board's decision, up to,
Could be withheld,
yeah,
could be adjusted.
yes.
I think I'd like to make a comment. I think there's some confusion as to the difference between the private sector, which I
Yes,
noticed
thank you,
to
Chris.
government employees. So historically, I'm a government employee, and compensation or annual raises, as we call them, are usually not tied to performance. Okay, so it's based purely on economy adjustment. Yeah.
Chris? I had to learn that too, being that I've never worked for a governmental agency. It's a little different.
Chair, Sandy is here. I don't know if you want to talk with her now, but up to you.
I believe I would rather do that next meeting, simply because the results would be retroactive if we approved it anyway. So if that's fair with everyone, Kika?
Yeah, so, based off of Chris's comment, I have a follow-up question. So under normal government increases, is it a fixed amount or is it up to?
It's fixed by a commission, a board, or some.
So in this case, for the CEO and executive director, it's handled a little differently in the contract as far as it being up to. Okay, and just to clarify further, the recommendation from the committee is to approve, a motion to approve, well, sorry, not jumping ahead of myself, but is to approve the 4%?
That's what the motion was that was on the table that was approved, yes.
This unusual situation with Lori is not necessarily normal. I don't think the DOE has the same for their superintendent, or in past Harts has not been treated the same way. So I think it's a contractual matter more than something that's ordained by state either practice or that. I think it could be, and in the past, I think the executive directors have had bonuses.
Any other discussion? All right. Summary of board member requests, Carolyn?
Thank you, Chair. I don't think that there were any specific requests, but I just want to clarify, did you want to defer the matter of the board executive officer cost of living increase until January, or did you just want to pause until you're ready and let me know?
I think we'll defer it till January because this is new materials coming out. I'd like to make sure the committee members all have access to it. But so the one request would be to receive this memo that was mentioned by the CEO about PSC EMs. So that would be the one request.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
thank you.
I appreciate it. That's all.
All right, and I wanted to thank you, Sandy, for coming down, but I think we're going to defer this. If you could work with Carolyn to make sure we get a copy of the memo, that would be great. Thank you. All right.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to see if you maybe mentioned the presence of member Kathy Sokugawa.
Yeah, not on the committee, so just like with all the other members that aren't on the committee, I appreciate you coming, but yeah, thank you. All right, so I think we can adjourn at 9:38 for the HR committee.
Hey, members, you guys want to roll or you guys want to take a break?
I'm going to roll.
We're going into
We take a 5-minute.
Yeah.
Good morning and welcome to I believe is the inaugural executive committee meeting. As long as I've been on the Hart board, I'd like to start off with, call this meeting to order. It's approximately 9:48 a.m. and I would like to start with roll call vote. Myself as chair is present. Vice Chair Chris Takashige. Present. And members Anthony Alto.
Present.
Member John Katahira.
Here.
Member Kaulana Park.
Here.
Thank you. Also would like to note the presence of Kathy Sokugawa, Lisa Baker, Nelson Lee, Roger Morton, and Natalie Iwasa online. Did I miss anybody? Nope. So just a brief explanation, I guess, before we go into public testimony. The executive committee is a committee that's in our rules and procedures. It's made up, it's a default committee made up of the chair, vice chair, chair of government relations, I believe, POC and finance. And then there's a succession if some of those members are not available. There's a succession to go into other chairs of other committees. But the purpose of this committee primarily is a rapid response committee to handle issues that come up that require more immediate attention or other policy questions or rules and procedures that govern the board in general. So with that said, I'd like to open it up for public testimony. Anybody online or in person that would like to provide testimony on any of the agenda items? Seeing none, hearing none, I'd like to move on to agenda item number 3. Propose amendments to the rules and operating procedures of the Hart Board of Directors. Members, I believe you have in your packet a proposed draft amendments to the rules and operating procedures of the Board of Directors of the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation, and just a little bit of a brief description and background of why these rules are being proposed. we're trying to bring our rules to be consistent with charter, with Act 1, as far as our appointed members by the state legislature pursuant to Act 1. Previously, our rules weren't quite consistent with charter as well as Act 1. So the amendments that are being offered are an attempt to bring our rules consistent with those particular items, Charter, Act 1, and make sure that we're consistent, as well as clarify the legislative appointees' role with the board, and to clarify the confidentiality agreements that are signed by all members of the board, as well as the state appointees, legislative appointees. So I believe this was posted with the 7-day advance, so you folks had an opportunity to review it. Is there any, well, could I get a motion to approve the proposed drafts to the rules and procedures?
I motion it.
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second to approve the proposed amendments to the rules. Is there any discussion on the proposed amendments? Yes, Roger? Hang on, Natalie. Roger, go ahead.
Yes, can you in layman's terms tell us what the revised rules how that would apply to state-appointed members as compared to the way we operate up to now?
So, and maybe Dan can help me out and fill in the gaps, but our current rules, if you look under definitions, Board of Directors, I believe it was, give me a second. Okay. Dan, you might want to try to help me out here, but I think the definitions actually didn't clearly identify the legislative appointees and their role in the board, and the distinction between a board member and a legislative appointee. So if you look in the definitions of a board member or member, it shall mean the members appointed to serve on the board as provided by revised charter, section 17-104. But it didn't really provide any definition for what a legislative appointee is in the board, or their status on the board pursuant to Act 1. So what we're doing here is adding a definition of a legislative appointee, that as far as a legislative appointee shall mean the individual appointed to serve by the Hawaii State Legislature pursuant to Act 1. So basically all we're doing is acknowledging the legislative appointees in our rules, and then further clarifying in the body of our rules what we're adding them on as far as if you look in section 2.1, where it refers to expectations of Board of Directors, we're adding legislative appointees so that it covers the rules and procedures, not only covers the recognized board members by charter, but also the legislative appointees pursuant to Act 1. And also clarifying the confidentiality agreement, which is our next agenda item.
I don't know if that's
as layman as I can get it.
What privileges would the legislative members have? Would they have voting rights?
No. I think if I recall correctly, Act 1 calls for appointed, non-voting, and not to be counted towards quorum.
Are they eligible to attend committee meetings? Yes, they are.
Yes.
They are already.
In fact, we welcome and we encourage, yes.
Can they participate in committee meetings?
Yes.
They cannot vote in committee meetings? Or can they vote in committee meetings?
Non-voting.
I know in some legislative bodies, other than members, sometimes have voting rights in committees, even at the, United States Senate and the House of Representatives have people that can't vote but can serve on committees like the district and the territorial members. But this is not the case here, or could it be?
Yeah, I mean, and anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the general intent of the legislative appointees were to provide insight, guidance, oversight, provide feedback to the legislature of how the proceedings of the Heart as an organization and as a board are going. I think we all recognize, and I think it's reflected in here, as well as in the resolution that was previously adopted. I can't remember it off the top of my head, but recognizing the valuable input that the legislative appointees bring to the Heart Board, and I think it's reflected in the 4 legislative appointees that we currently have. So their insight, their knowledge is a tremendous help to the business of the board, aside from having the ability to actually vote. But I think their input can influence or inform actions taken by the board.
Is there any conflict between the board rules and the city charter rules?
I think the attempt here is to try to bring them in line with each other. That's the attempt. Yes, Kathy.
I signed the confidential agreement, but I really didn't read it. But it says here, board members and legislative appointees. And I guess that's to underscore that it's all inclusive, but if you're legislatively appointed, aren't you already a board member? So should it be retitled board members including legislative appointees? Or why are we making a separate distinction?
So that's a great question. Yeah. Oh, sorry, it wasn't on. So the short answer is that the board is set by the city charter, and the legislative appointees are empowered by virtue of Act 1, which the state legislature passed. And so they're just different authorities that created the thing. And so the board members refers to the 10 members set by city charter, and then the legislative appointees are by Act 1. But you're not technically a member of the board, you're a legislative appointee to the board, if that makes sense. And I'm more than happy to speak with you more at length, and we can do that offline to sort of talk about more of the history of how this came about.
I mean, again, it's not a substantive question. I don't think it makes any difference in how we're treated. But for that purpose, I don't think it's justified in creating a title like that and creating that differentiation. I don't think it's substantive to confidential unless you want to make it clear that legislative appointees are no different than anybody else on the board.
I think the intent was to actually try to include rather than exclude.
Right.
If it's taken that way, that wasn't the intent. The intent was to try to include the legislative appointees and recognize the value that they bring to the board.
I can understand that. I just thinking that a cold look at it, that doesn't seem like the intent. But, it's not a substantive comment. My other comment would be, only last one is, the proposal is to add the words and or privileged. Is
Oh,
that a
that's-
common
So
definition?
that's the next item.
Oh, okay.
That's the actual agreement, yeah. This is just for the rules for now.
Yeah, and if I may, Chair, so the confidentiality agreement that you have in front of you is not the one that you signed. You signed a different version altogether. So this is a new proposal altogether. And there's red lines to a new proposal, so it's a little bit confusing right now, but we can discuss on the next item.
Yes, Lisa.
Chair,
Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Natalie, I'm sorry, you first, and then Lisa.
okay, thank you. So, first of all, thank you so much for doing this. I thoroughly appreciate this. And I think, it's important to understand that there is clearly a distinction between appointees and board members. And I think that the current rules conflict with the charter because the rules put appointees in as members, and clearly, according to the charter, they are not members. And some people may say, well, that's just semantics. But, and I'm not an attorney, but with respect to my understanding that if something were to happen with an appointee, would the laws that apply to board members under the charter apply to the appointees equally? And I'm not so sure that that's the case. And I see this because the Corporation Counsel and the AG's office are at a 180 with respect to the legal treatment of the appointees. So I think this is a very important change to the rules, and I appreciate it, and I hope that you all support this. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Natalie. Lisa?
Yeah, just more administrative. So on the table of contents of what's in the binder, there's 5 areas that are noted as deleted. And I don't think that those are material, but I don't know why they would be on the table of contents as deleted.
I believe they were just renumbered.
Okay.
Yeah.
You would think that would be,
Page numbers. So it's deleting, it was page 7 and now it's page 8. So it's coming up in the red lines as showing deleted, but it's just changing the pages because
okay,
of the...
going forward, it'd be really great to take those off as edits. Because had there been anything, and I kind of just did a quick cursory review of it, if we approve this, we're approving deletions that aren't noted, but they're in the table of contents. So just from a redlining perspective, I think we can, you can take this off as brought out so that it's not, evident on the piece that we're approving. But I think with that understanding, I'm totally fine with this, even though I'm not a member of this committee.
If I may, Chair, I just wanted to note, and I think you raised this already, is that there is this reference to the confidentiality agreement. This is page 5, and there's a little highlight for Appendix 1. So that's going to be a puka until the committee gets to the next issue, but that's the intent, is to fill that in.
And if I could further, just reiterate, page 5, the third to the last paragraph, that is the intent. It's to recognize that the insights and perspectives of the legislative appointees are helpful to the board and its committees, and their presence is noted, as far as their input into heart matters. So it's an attempt to recognize and encourage their participation going forward. I did want to clarify, so now I found out why this kind of all came about to begin with. And to Lisa's point, on page 3, if you look at the definition of board member or member, it says on the note that it was deleted after, if it says, board member or member shall mean the members appointed to serve on the board as provided in revised charter section 17-104 and Hawaii revised statutes and Act 1. That was what was there prior. And so, again, to everyone's point, technically, Act 1, a legislative appointee is not a board member pursuant to revised charter. So we had to delete that section out of the definition to make it consistent with charter. And then reinsert or create a definition of what a legislative appointee is, so that we can properly recognize the legislative appointees pursuant to Act 1. That was the gist of it. Any questions, comments? Yes. Sorry, Anthony, Lisa?
Just one more request when we do this. Could we put page or number 1 of 7, 2 of 7, 3 of 7, and date every page, please? To avoid the problems that we had earlier this past year with revision and what is included, all the pages that are included in the rules and guidelines, please.
I don't have a problem with that request. I don't quite understand it, but I'm sure somebody does.
I think lawyers, legal people would understand it. It's to make it very clear exactly what's included and what's not included in this document. And it's actually surprising to me that that hasn't already been done, because it is a legal document.
So if I understand it, if we adopt these amendments, it's going to be adopted as a new revised rule as of today.
And as part of that, I will insert page numbers and dates so that it's, just say you drop your document on the floor and it scatters, you can put it back together.
Thank you.
And it'll be more orderly.
Thanks, Lisa. Anthony?
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to say that I understand that this process is being done for principled, if you like, technical reasons. They're not aimed at any one particular board member or legislative appointee, but I think it will have the effect of bringing Natalie further into the heart of what we're doing, and I think that is a really good thing. Natalie is an unsung hero. I'm not sure how many people are aware that she saved our bacon during the last legislative session when she caught a very significant error in the way that a bill was written that would have impacted our finances. So I applaud you, Chair, for making these changes. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Natalie. Thanks, Anthony. Any other further questions, comments? Yes, Kathy.
So I think you mentioned, I just want to confirm, so you're saying legislative appointees do not help with quorum? They're no
not
longer
counted
for
toward,
quorum,
they're not
but they used to
counted.
be.
No.
That was changed a few years back. Yeah. Yes. Yes, Roger.
And I'm, just so there's no misunderstanding, I'm fully supportive of this change. I think it's overdue that we recognize our state appointees for the contributions that they make. And I'm mindful that the state has amended state law to provide various funding sources for us. And I think that providing transparency and even providing access to the board through the legislative appointee is a very positive thing.
Thanks, Roger. Any other? Yeah.
I'm fully supportive of the proposed changes. After the dust settles, is it possible to create like a cheat sheet in the way of a table that maybe lists what board members are allowed to do versus legislative appointees? Because there seems to be some confusion, participation, voting, otherwise. But if we had a cheat sheet in a table, that might be clearer for everybody.
The only, I'm sorry, Chair, the only real distinction is the only real distinction is in voting, or so that's
okay.
Really about it. Yeah.
Yeah. Voting and quorum. Other than that, legislative appointees are considered full members of this body and can participate in any committee or function that we do. And again, as I think Anthony brought up, the other outlying issue that we're trying to resolve is making sure that all board members and legislative appointees can fully participate in all proceedings of this body, including executive session. So we want to make sure we get as much participation from everyone as possible. That's the intent. Yes, Colana.
Just a point of clarification. So in here, does it specifically say that legislative appointees are non-voting?
That's actually in Act 1.
Oh, it's in Act 1?
Yeah.
So it's covered in Act
Yeah.
1, but do we need to?
No. Yeah, we reference Act 1, and yeah, that's, unless, Dan?
No, I'm comfortable with
Yeah.
how it is.
Yes, Kathy.
This is all superficial stuff, but on the letterhead for Hart, then should you have two columns, board members and legislative appointees? Should we be distinguishing them?
I don't know if we actually have, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think we need to separate it out on a letterhead. I don't know. That's something maybe we can talk about.
It's non-substantive. I
Yeah.
think we as a group of voting and non-voting members work really well together, I
Yep.
think, which hasn't been true always from past experience. So I'm just a little concerned that if Kika and Chris are not at the helm, whether there become more adversarial relationships instead because they can.
I mean, you know what? And this is just my personal opinion. I've always welcomed input, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. That's the democratic process that we live in, and I think it's helpful. I hope that we continue to treat each other with respect and decorum. But we have difference of opinions, and I think that's a good thing. It makes for a better product. And that's why even on committees, even though we have committee members who are voting on the committee, non-voting members of the board as well as the legislative appointees can participate and provide their input and their insight, which could inform or influence the ultimate decision of the voting members. So it all I think lends itself to a better product at the end of the day.
Totally agree.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, there's a motion to approve agenda item number 3. Propose amendments to rules and operating procedures of the Hart Board of Directors. Are there any opposition to the motion to approve? And before, so with the suggestions that were made by member Lisa Baker of numbering the pages and whatnot, is there any opposition? Seeing none, the motion is approved. Thank you very much, board members. So we're going to move on to item number 4, and this is the actual confidentiality agreement. Before I start discussion, is there anyone in the public or online that would like to provide public testimony? Seeing none, hearing none. Okay, can I get a motion to consider proposed revisions to the confidentiality agreement of the Hart Board of Directors?
Motion.
To be moved?
Second.
Second? Okay, any discussion? Well, before we go into discussion, let me just kind of give a brief summary. So, prior to this, we have 2 confidentiality agreements, one for board members and one for, one for board members and one for legislative appointees. This is an attempt to merge the 2 and to make certain amendments to the agreement that protect the board, protect Hart as an organization, because we do talk about very sensitive information on various levels of the project. And so we want to be mindful of our duties and responsibilities as officers of the city and of boards and commissions, and make sure that we protect the integrity of this organization and the information that we are provided and have access to as a result of our position on the Hart Board of Directors or as a legislative appointee. And, but we also want to be mindful that we are all volunteers. And, you know, from my personal opinion, we're here because we just want to make sure that this project is done, is completed and completed in the best way possible, in the best interest of the public. And with all that said, you know, this has been a very educational process. I want to thank Dan and Carolyn for their help, assistance, and guidance. We have had numerous, and I want to stress numerous, iterations of the original draft, and we've been working through them. I also want to note and thank tremendously Natalie and her input in the process as we've been working through these various iterations to get to a point where all of our concerns are met and the board at the end of the day is protected, the project is protected, HART as an organization is protected, and the members are protected, but also recognizing that we don't want to make it too punitive in nature or onerous that it disincentivizes volunteer board members from serving on a board like HART. So with all that said, I think Carolyn distributed a draft, a proposed draft. And again, if I had to show you the other iterations of this draft, we would be here for quite a while. So it's taken a lot for us to get to this point. I have no problem doing this in open session, but if anybody feels the need that we have to go into executive session, I'd be more than happy to entertain that.
And if I, Chair, if I may just clarify, so there are two versions. The one Chair had, we had gone back and forth and there had been a bunch of revisions. So this was sort of a clean version that Chair had put together yesterday. And then the red lines were a couple of last minute suggestions that I had to that. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I would like to focus on the red line that Dan provided more recently. And I do want to, I've had conversations, and Natalie, I'm sure, you know, I don't want to speak for you, but I just want to say that we have had, I think we've gotten to a place where we're good with the and/or privilege. I think, Kathy, you mentioned, you know, something about towards those references, and it's open for discussion. This is going to be a board decision, but I think generally speaking, privilege, I'm assuming, is referencing any legal advice or legal counsel. So that I don't believe I have an issue with, but if anybody else does, again, this is going to be a board decision. As far as in section 2B, revised ordinance of Honolulu Title I, Chapter 3, Article 6. So this is one that we kind of went round and round and round and round on. Initially, I didn't quite understand the relevance of putting this section in, primarily because it references financial disclosures, and I didn't see the relevance of it as far as confidentiality. But thanks to some information, I mean, and I did want to give Dan an opportunity, if you wanted to expand on why you feel this particular reference to Chapter 3 is needed and critical.
Yeah, so that particular reference is to the ethics provisions in the ROH and the revised ordinances of Honolulu. And I also wanted to clarify, these red lines are not to the current version of the agreement that everyone here in the room has signed. So these are just red lines to the clean version that the chair had provided yesterday. But this whole agreement is new, essentially, compared with the one that is currently in place for everybody. So just encourage anyone, if you have questions about the agreement as a whole, for chair or for me.
Yeah. This agreement, if it's adopted today, will supersede any agreement, past, future, or present. This will become the new universal agreement that we would all, pursuant to the rules we just adopted, be required to sign. And so I don't know if you want to expand on the reason for putting in Section 3, Article 3, or?
Only that it then encompasses the current ethics provisions in the ROH, yeah.
I have a question. And so, again, you know, this is the beauty of it all, right? We all learn something new every day. So I initially didn't quite agree that this was relevant to this agreement. However, this is a question for Dan. When I read some of the information, the additional information that you provided, I guess I wanted to ask if part of the reasoning for putting in Chapter 3. So if you look at that last section, 2B, we inserted, when we reference all these different charter, Article 10, Chapter 3, ROH, Revised Statute 8492F, I wanted to be, there were iterations where it was more specific to specific sections within those chapters. You know, Dan wanted to keep it more general because sometimes the legislature adopts new laws and it changes sections around. So, okay, good point, but we added in as specifically related to the disclosure of confidential information. So the intent of that is, although we're keeping it general to the chapters or to the articles, the agreement, the intent is to be specific to issues related to the disclosure of confidential information within those statutes or articles. Is that the way you read it?
So, in part, Chair, any board member who's appointed pursuant to charter authority is going to be subject to the city's ethics code. Yeah, and so that's going to apply regardless of what we say in here. And so the point of this is to provide notice to everyone that there are other sources of law that may apply in addition to just the plain text of this agreement.
Right, but when we're talking specifically, because this has enforcement provisions in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking about enforcing this agreement, which we're signing, because if what we're taking, what you just said, then we don't need this because we're already by default subject to all the rules and regulations of ethics.
The city charter members are, the legislative appointees are not.
Okay, good point. So when I read some of the information, our Chapter 3 ROH, they would have the jurisdiction to enforce. Because is that how you read it?
That's right. So the city,
any allegation, any violation of this agreement would go through the Ethics Commission?
No. So the City Ethics Commission, and we can go into executive session if you want a more thorough discussion of legal issues, since this is technically legal advice, but it's okay to do the sort of generally in open session. Violations of the city ethics provisions would be prosecuted by the City Ethics Commission. Any state ethics code, obviously the State Ethics Commission handles that, but this agreement would be enforceable by the board against any members who violated the provision.
Okay, then I would have, I mean, it's not an issue for me right now, but I would have further clarifying questions. We can talk about that offline.
Okay.
But, so this is a way, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, because the legislative appointees are not necessarily covered because they're not considered city officers or city board members by charter. This, by signing this, it brings them into the fold as far as confidentiality as it relates to the HART board. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it ensures that the legislative appointees are included and covered, and confidentiality agreements, yeah.
Just lastly, the only concern I have with this red line version is in the 2B, the red insertion of any applicable source of law, including. And the only reason I have concern with that is because I like to know what I'm signing. And when you say something like any applicable source of law, that's a lot. And for me, simplistically, it's like signing a blank check. I don't know what I'm signing. And so I would have issue, it seems like we're pretty exhaustive. We're including Article 10 of the Charter, Chapter 3 of the revised ordinances, HRS 8492F, even 103D, which I don't think is relevant, but to the extent applicable, okay. But to add in the words, any applicable source of law, that's kind of like, I don't know, that's just my personal opinion. I would prefer to remove that, but again, it's a board decision. I leave it up to you guys. With that said, I'm done. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Kika?
Yes, well, let's go Chris first, and then Natalie.
Is anywhere in the statutes or ethics, the codes, use the word knowingly?
Okay, good question.
I am used to seeing that word knowingly disclosed.
So, as I mentioned, and Dan can jump in, we went back and forth on this.
So, Chair, it may be, if you
Yeah.
want to go into executive session, maybe we can have a better discussion with, yeah.
I don't know, are you suggesting it, or, I'm good.
So again, as I'm providing legal advice, if you want to.
Would you prefer?
I think it would be better.
Okay. So, members, you know what? Yeah, so here's the deal. If we go into executive session, Natalie is more than likely not gonna be allowed in. I'm gonna put it to the board, if you guys, for this one reason, for this one purpose, which Natalie is a center point of, if you guys would allow Natalie to attend the executive session on this. And I've talked about it with Dan. He's given his legal advice on it. There are some legal concerns with doing that, but I think, in all fairness and transparency, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Natalie's input on this, and at the appropriate time, because I'm sure if we say we're not gonna allow Natalie to go in, then she's gonna have some things that she's gonna wanna say prior to us going in. So, what's the board's pleasure? Dan, do you wanna offer any input? Okay. What's the board's pleasure for this item? I know this is stepping out of the norm, but I think it's important to get our input on this. Yes, Kaulana?
Maybe we should ask that.
Okay.
If she wants to,
Natalie, Chris, are you, Paul?
Yeah, I'm done.
Natalie, you wanna?
Yeah, well, first of all, if I may make some general comments without addressing the executive session, is that okay? Okay. So thank you, first of all, for doing this, because as most of you know, it's been many years now that I haven't been allowed into the executive sessions. So a couple clarification points. First of all, my understanding is that there's only one confidentiality agreement, and it's the same agreement that Lori and her staff sign, all board members and appointees. Now, going back when this first came out, I put in an information request, and I asked for all of the signed agreements, and there were many appointees or many board members who had never even signed the agreement. And then when I started talking to board members, I found out that some of them had never read it. Some of them had never thought about it. I have examples of violations left and right all over the place. So, the current confidentiality agreement, in my opinion, is not worth the paper it's written on, because it's not enforced, it's not read, it's not understood. I think simple is best. I really appreciate this condensing and trying to define the points better. With respect to, the definition of including privileged, I'm okay with that. Again, I think if you want to have it so that people follow a document like this, it should be easy to understand. And so when people are putting out confidential information, it should be labeled confidential. That takes out any potential misunderstanding of what that information is. Kika, I'm on board with you on 2B with respect to including the wording of any applicable law. I don't know how anybody could sign this with that in there without knowing. I mean, our laws are so broad and so thick, it would take years to go through them and understand them. With respect to the Chapter 3, Article 6 Ethics Commission, I'm just curious, whether that would mean that appointees need to go through ethics training and file a financial disclosure statement, because I have already received an opinion from the Ethics Commission itself that we don't need to sign those documents. So I still have some questions on this, and if you do go into executive session, I hope that I will be included. And thank you again so much, Kika, for all of your work on this. I know it was a lot of time you put into it.
Thanks, Natalie. Any other questions, comments before we entertain the idea of going into executive session? Seeing none. Okay, a request to go into executive session has been made pursuant to revised statute 92-4 and subsection 92-5A4. We are allowed to go into executive session to consult our attorney on board powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. Do I have a motion to go into executive session? Yes, move, second? Seconded. Okay, before we take the vote to go into okay, is there any opposition to going into executive session?
And including Natalie.
Well, so do we want to revise the motion? Or do you want to take that separate? Let's motion to go into exec first. Oh, okay, let's revise the motion. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion on the motion to go into exec and to include Natalie in this executive session? No discussion. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, the motion is passed. Okay, we'll go into exec and then we'll. Welcome back. We exited executive session where we were discussing item number 4, proposed revisions to the confidentiality agreement of the Hart Board of Directors. We had a very, very, very productive discussion in executive session, and I believe we have come up with a proposed confidentiality agreement that we are prepared to take action on as a committee and then refer it on to the full board for further action. So with that said, can I please get a motion to approve the proposed draft confidentiality agreement? I believe you folks all received a updated copy with all the amendments. Can I get a motion to approve the draft confidentiality agreement?
Motion to approve the new draft.
Motion, can I get a second, committee?
Second.
Okay, got a second. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve? Anybody want to say anything?
Kika?
Yes, Natalie.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to publicly thank you again for all of your work on this. And I think I saw the media come in earlier, so I'm sure they'll have something on this, but really appreciate everybody's comments, allowing me to participate in this one executive session so I could understand what you folks were doing. And the revised draft, I just got it now, so I haven't looked at it, but I'm pretty sure I would feel very confident and comfortable signing this and going forward, be allowed to formally participate in the full board. So thank you so much.
Any other questions, comments?
Sure, maybe just, if you can just summarize what the changes were.
Okay.
coming out of our session, it's basically the word knowingly, right?
So, just for everyone's knowledge, basically, there was discussion and we took the recommendations of our legal counsel for revisions on the latest iteration of the draft, and we included as a committee the words knowingly in sections 2A. I shall not knowingly disclose confidential information. And in 2B, I understand and agree that if I knowingly fail to honor this agreement, comma. Those were the two changes that were made suggested in executive session and what is reflected in the document that we are taking action on at this moment. Any further discussion, questions? So I just want to add, I want to thank our legal counsel, Dan and Carolyn, and Natalie for their input. The intent was to try to get a draft to a point where it could come before the committee, and we could get something accomplished that everybody is agreeable to, that we protect the organization to the fullest extent possible, but we also don't make it so onerous that, as volunteer board members, we might subject ourselves to, anything that wouldn't necessarily be inconsistent with current laws and statutes and the charter. So I believe we've come to an agreement that reflects all of those things, and now we can include everybody in all of our discussions so that we get full participation of all board members and legislative appointees. And that's what's before us right now. So with that said, if there's no further discussion, is there any opposition? Seeing none, we have a confidentiality agreement, and I'm assuming that at the appropriate time, I guess we're going to circulate for everybody to sign, and we can move forward. Okay, so that is the last item on the agenda. I'm sorry, item number 5. Carolyn, do we have a summary of, I think we had a few from member Lisa Baker as far as rules and processes?
Thank you, Chair. So from what I understand, Board Member Baker would like a process to be created for dealing with breach of confidentiality. And that is something that I will work on and include as part of my operations manual, but it will be vetted through the board.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anything else?
Yes, that would be requested was that the date.
Oh, that's right.
Numbers in the order of 1 through.
Yes, I will add the page numbers to, yes, that's right. I will add the page numbers and the date to the rules and operating procedures for the board. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments? Item number 5, seeing none. If there's no further business, this committee is adjourned. Thank you. Members, can we roll right into board? Okay. Are we ready? We good?
Yes.
Okay, we're rolling?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right. Not quite good afternoon, but close to it. Welcome to the Board of Directors meeting of the Heart Board. Today's Thursday, December 18th. It is approximately 11:52 a.m. I'd like to start off by, I'd like to call this meeting to order and start off with the roll call. Chair is present. Vice Chair Chris Takashige. Present. Anthony Alto.
Present.
Don Takeuchi Apuna is excused. Lisa Baker.
Here.
Natalie Iwasa.
Here.
John Katahira.
Here.
Jared Kawashima is excused. Nelson Lee.
Here.
Roger Morton.
Here.
Joe O'Donnell is excused. Kalana Park.
Present.
Ed Sniffen is excused, and Kathy Sokugawa. Thank you. Okay, we move on to agenda item number 2, public testimony. Is there anyone here in person or online that would like to provide testimony on any of the agenda items on our agenda? Seeing and hearing none, let's move on to agenda item number 3, committee reports. Project Oversight Committee, Kalana Park.
Mr. Chair, we had a good discussion earlier this morning. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We had a good discussion earlier this morning. We had the October monthly progress update by Van Suda. The only pending investigation on that is the 138 kV infrastructure and cabling. Other than that, things are moving along as best we can. And regarding the PMOC report, that was also a status update. There were 3 eminent domain parcels that were brought up: Pacific Guardian Center, Design Partners Properties, and the Muraoka Trust that the committee had approved, all 3, to move forward to the board.
Thank you. Members, any questions, comments? Seeing none. Moving on, Finance Committee, John Katahira.
Thank you. Okay, so we had 2 things that we reviewed. First was the FY27 capital and operating budgets update. We reported that the budgets have been submitted to City Council via the Mayor's Office by the deadline, which was December 1st. It's currently with City Council, and we expect to get the budget back, perhaps with edits, by June 2026, at which time we'll take into consideration any proposed changes, and then as a board, we will submit the final budget by the end of the month, June 2026. So we're on schedule for that. And then we were also provided a presentation on the November 2025 cash flow report. There were no action items in our committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Human Resource Committee, Lisa Baker.
Thank you, Chair. I think since I have an item to go to the vote in one more section, can I just defer to that?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 4, Heart Executive Director and CEO update. Lori?
Chair, and for the first item, Bill 60, we have been working with the City Council members, and what I think is going to be proposed, hopefully they'll put it on the January committee meeting, is to have the MOS match the LPA. So hopefully that does go through, and if it does pass out of committee, then it'll go to full council in February. And again, that language is just to match the minimal operable segment to the locally preferred alternative, which will give HART the authorization to start looking at extensions from East Kapolei to West Kapolei and from Ala Moana Center to University of Hawaii. Are there any questions on that one?
Questions, members?
Just a reminder, this was unsolicited. This is not coming from HART.
Yeah,
Okay.
actually, that was, so, but, I guess more of a question or a comment, but it was a city council
is-
initiative.
This is.
But they have involved HART
For
in the
input.
discussion to make sure that
Yes.
it's beneficial for all stakeholders.
Correct.
Yep,
Correct.
thank you.
Thank you. The next item, Victoria Ward settlement. So it was in the media that we did finally settle. We've been keeping you folks abreast the whole time. This is Howard Hughes case. We were in litigation with them for many years. I think it was close to over $200 million is the lawsuit. We ended up settling for about $44 million. Okay, got the nod from our attorneys, $44 million. And it took a long time just for the legalese people to get all the language settled. And it wasn't necessarily Howard Hughes, but there are other sub-companies under them. So we're glad to have that done and complete. And it was accounted for in our estimate at completion. We did do the last couple of weeks, we do this quarterly, we have a congressional update for all 4 of them. This time, it was just with the staff, the Congress people were not personally available to meet with us, but we just gave them a brief project update and just on our financials, the GET, TAT that Mike O'Keefe explained to you folks. So it was very positive. A couple of questions that they have is, are there any projects that they could help us with that's less than a couple of million? And I said, no, everything at heart is over $2 million, but nevertheless, they've asked for a list of some projects that are less than 25 million that they could take a look at. So Vance and Corey and their team are putting together that list to give to them. And then recently, I had to present to the UH Board of Regents, and that was a very pleasant meeting. They just asked for a 5-minute presentation update on the project, which I did, and then they granted us approval to continue to negotiate a term sheet. Is that? No? That's not quite, I didn't word it right.
They approved the term sheet.
Oh, they approved the term sheet. Oh, okay. So that was like I said, a very pleasant meeting with the Board of Regents. And then the last item is the Aloha United Way board chair. I know you came to that fundraiser here, and we ended up having a Heart and Hiko band performing and having an ice cream social for Heart and Hiko, and we raised over $8,500 to donate to Aloha United Way. So very proud of our team for doing that. And that concludes my report, Chair.
Members, any questions?
Okay.
Did you want to say anything about tomorrow or no?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. Move on to agenda item number 5. Before we move on, is there any public testimony on this or any other agenda item? Seeing none? Okay. Lisa, HR committee.
Yeah, so first of all, the HR committee did meet, and we discussed this item, the way it's worded on here on 5. For today, we are going to, and this was discussed in the committee meeting, we are going to, what do you call it? Consider the Heart Board Executive Officer at a later date. Defer it. So we're just, we talked only about the salary adjustment to the Heart CEO based on the salary commission, I'm going to forget the exact wording, that was provided to the city for 2025, which is basically the cost of living change. This is the salary commission, I don't know how you say it, what the exact word is, but it's the published document that came out from the salary commission group.
For positions other than Honolulu City Council member positions, so it's basically.
Get to it fast enough. It's dated April 23rd, 2025, and it is a public domain document, so if anyone's interested in it, they can see that. So we need to entertain a motion at this time to consider providing to the Heart CEO a 4%, which is the cost of living increase as provided for in this memo from the Salary Commission to the CEO for this year. And her contract requires that we look at this once a year and that we provide up to the cost of living increase. And the conversation at the time in the committee meeting was that the performance, and there was no reason not to consider this for the CEO.
Are you making that motion?
I'll make that motion, yes. So I'm making the motion to approve a 4%, basically cost of living increase, although I don't know that the city calls it that, for the CEO. What do they call it? Just adjustment?
Salary compensation adjustment.
Salary compensation adjustment, thank you, Roger, for the CEO for the year beginning July 1st, 2025.
Have a motion? Second. Okay. Any discussion, members? So the motion on the floor is to, for an increase of 4%.
Yes.
As stated. Okay, any questions, comments online? Nope, okay. Seeing none, is there any opposition? Seeing none, the motion is approved. And just for the record, we are going to take up the Heart Board Executive Officer at a future date.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 6. Eminent domain. Kaulana.
Mr. Chair, we had discussed this earlier, all three of these. We asked for
Okay, so you want to take, you want to make a motion individually, 6A? Can I get a motion? Can I get a motion to approve item number 6A? Let's see, resolution number 2025-28 regarding the Pacific Guardian Center. So move, second. Do you have any discussion? Questions? Seeing none. Any opposition? Seeing none, motion is approved. Okay, let's move on to 6B, resolution 2025-29, acquiring by eminent domain fee simple interest. This is regarding Design Partners Properties Number 5 LLC. Do I have a motion? Motion is second. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none. Any opposition? Seeing none, the motion is approved. Again, these items were discussed in the Project Oversight Committee and came out of Project Oversight, so we're taking action on their recommendations. Item number 6C. Oh, okay, thank you. Item number 6C, Resolution 2025-30. Can I get a motion to acquire eminent domain easement over under through property under Muraoka Trust?
So moved.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none. Any opposition? Seeing none. Motion is approved. Thank you. I'd like to, members, unless there's opposition, I'd like to take item number 8 out of order. Eminent domain regarding Servco property. Lori, are you prepared to take this item out of order?
Yes, Chair.
Are we going to do this in public session or? No. Okay, so I believe this item we need to enter into executive session. I apologize. Yes.
Make a motion.
Thanks, Lisa. Motion second. Any opposition to going into executive session? Okay, so for this item, under revised statutes 92-4, subsection 92-5, A3, to deliberate concerns and authority concerning the authority of persons designated by the board to conduct labor negotiations, as well as to consult our board attorney on questions and issues pertaining to the board's powers, duties, privileges, immunities, and liabilities. We are now taking a vote on the motion to enter into executive session. Is there any opposition? Seeing none, we're going to go into executive session on this item. Roger?
Kika?
Hang on. Yes?
I was, in the spirit of inclusion, I know the last time we sort of took a special purpose invitation to Natalie to participate. Could we do that again until such, anticipating that she will sign a non-disclosure agreement coming up? Is there any opposition to that?
It's fine with me, and in fact, if she wants to sign it now, all the better, but she's indicated she intends to sign it, so I don't have any issue.
So Natalie, are you hearing all this discussion?
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Yes, I do plan on signing the agreement and would like to attend.
Yeah, any opposition? Okay, sounds good. We'll go into executive session. I will try to make this efficient. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Welcome back to the Board of Directors meeting for HART. We're coming out of executive session. We were discussing item number 8, which we took out of order, eminent domain regarding Servco property. There was an update and discussion regarding this agenda item. There was no action taken, and that's the report for item number 8. We are moving back to item number 7, Hitachi Rail Honolulu litigation, and I believe there is a request to go back into executive session. So members, if I can get a motion and a second? Motion. Moved, seconded. Any objection to going back into executive session?
Chair,
Yes.
just to ask so that we can avoid having to do this again.
Yep.
Is there anything else on our agenda that might require an executive session that we can throw into this?
I don't foresee anything else on the agenda item, but, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I don't foresee anything else pertaining to this particular agenda item or this subject matter. So with that said, is there any objection to going into back into executive session? Okay, so with the authority granted by HRS Chapter 92, we'll enter into executive session to discuss item number 7, Hitachi Rail Honolulu litigation. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Welcome back. We are out of executive session. Just as a brief summary, we were in executive session discussing the update of item number 7, our agenda, Hitachi Rail Honolulu litigation. There was no action taken in executive session. However, we do have an action item that we need to take up regarding this agenda item to ratify the counterclaim against Hitachi Rail Honolulu. Do I have a motion to ratify the counterclaim? Motion. Motion, second? Motion and second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, motion is approved. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 9, propose amendments to the rules and operating procedures of the HART Board of Directors. Okay, this agenda item was taken up in the executive committee earlier today. There was a lot of discussion. The intent of these rule amendments is to bring our rules and operating procedures to make it consistent with the charter as well as with Act 1 that was passed by the legislature in 2017, I believe. Sorry. Act 1? Yeah. Okay. So the purpose of this is to bring our rules current and to be consistent with current charter and as well as the Act 1, as well as clarify requirements of the board and legislative appointees to sign the confidentiality agreement. Is there a motion, or the recommendation of the committee was to approve the proposed amendments as drafted? Is there any, can I get a motion to approve? Motion? Can I get a second? Second? Okay, is there any discussion on the proposed rules, amendments to the rules? No discussion. Is there any objections? Okay, motion is approved. So the proposed rules amendments are approved. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 10, proposed revisions to the confidentiality agreement of the HART Board of Directors. This was another agenda item that was discussed at length in the executive committee. The committee came out with a draft that was approved and put forward to the board for further approval. And the intent of this agreement was to, I guess, consolidate the agreements between the HART Board of Directors as well as the legislative appointees, and to address some concerns that were raised regarding the confidentiality agreement. These concerns were addressed, and we have an agreement in front of us. that is ready for approval by the full board. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion.
Moved, second? Moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Anyone online? Anyone? Natalie, Anthony? Nope. All good? Okay. Are there any objections to the motion to approve? Seeing none, motion is approved. Summary? Yes, Natalie.
If I may, I just want to thank you again and thank you to the board members for supporting this effort. I thoroughly appreciate this effort. It was supposed to have been done earlier this year. And then, of course, Corporation Counsel and the AG's office, I think, really need to come to some kind of agreement. But this is a huge step for us. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yep, and then, and I want to echo, again, this was a pretty comprehensive exercise between ourselves with our in-house counsel and our executive officer, and of course this morning with the full board. So I'm just happy that we're at the point where we can now all engage and be a part of all the discussions. So any other comments? Nope, seeing none. Item number 11, summary of board requests. And congratulations, Natalie, by the way. Summary of board member requests.
Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there are any requests made during the Board of Directors meeting today, so thank you.
Nothing? Okay. So that's the last item on the agenda. I do want to say this is, I believe, our last meeting prior to the holidays, prior to Christmas, prior to New Year's. So I do want to say it's been a very exciting, eventful 2025. I appreciate all your guys' time and commitment to the board and to what we're here for. I want to express my appreciation to everyone, Dan, Carolyn, Olelo, Hart, their staff. I think we're headed in a good direction, and wish everyone a wonderful Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And I want to open it up to anybody, if anybody wants to say anything going into the new year. You guys all?
Just, I think the board composition has changed a lot, and I think for the better. And wish everybody too a very happy holiday.
Thanks, Roger. Anybody else want to? And I also just want to, say I appreciate you guys' time. I know this is an ongoing discussion of how we can be more efficient, but I mean, if anybody has any suggestions, of course, we can talk about it. But as you can see, from my point of view, I mean, all the issues that we've been talking about today have been pretty important. So appreciate your guys' time and commitment very much. Just cannot state that enough. Okay, with that said, if there's no other further business, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Right on. Oh, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Awesome.
See you guys.
Hey, Roger.
This is draft.
Oh, yeah, Roger.
On page 8.